RCR with Paul Brennan, Reality Check Radio.
So, to the threats to private property ownership in New South Wales, Australia, and the proposed social media ban in Australia, is it a gateway to digital ID? Coming back on the program is Kate Mason, who has an extensive background in welfare and community development. She spent the last 3 years researching global narratives that are leading us toward a dystopian world of surveillance. She writes at Substack, Deconstructing 41R Narratives, and she joins us from across the Tasman. Kate, good to have you back.
Hi, Paul. Nice to see you again.
Okay, so, boy, the news never gets better, Kate, is my impression from our chats.
It's always a good news story in Australia.
Okay, let's start with this threat to private property ownership. What's all that about?
Okay, so I've been documenting and researching a number of things going on in Australia. So it's not just one thing. So it's this compounding scenarios that are going to all come together fairly much around the same time. So I'll just go through, just quickly. We've got widespread managed retreat, which is policy coming out next year in New South Wales, which is the removal of property rights and infrastructure based on climate change modelling.
Mm-hmm.
We've got
very similar is happening here, by the way, Kate. Very similar happening here. Okay,
absolutely.
Almost carbon copy. Yep.
Yep, Capity was what alerted me to this, but it's been rolled out a lot this year in Australia. And then we've got the local government, New South Wales, putting out, they're saying councils are broke, which would be the same in New Zealand. Councils are broke.
Yep, same. Yep.
We need to stop capping rates, which means we need to stop having, we need to be able to make rates go up. And then we have Australia's at the end of its sort of infrastructure cliff. So we're talking about the infrastructure's at the end of its life, basically normal infrastructure, so sewage and roads, etc. Councils are broke. This is the sort of thing they're talking about. And then we've got all the new disaster infrastructure that's going to be put into towns. And then on the other flip side of that, we've got BlackRock buying up global infrastructure partners, and Larry Fink basically saying governments are broke. So infrastructure is going to be privatised. So we've got all of that. That's all going to be a huge amount more cost to people in their homes. We've got insurances going up. We're going to have climate overlays over people's towns and areas and homes, which is going to make insurance go up even more. And that now what I've just found last week was Australian government's going to bring in energy ratings for every home in Australia, existing homes. So currently, if you want to do a new build, you have to have a 7-star rating to do a new build, energy rating. They're going to put this over existing homes now. So the consultation closed at the end of August, the consultation that nobody was aware of closed end of August, and we're looking at a situation where homes need to get up to a 5-star energy rating, existing homes. And the documents state very clearly that the vast majority of existing homes in Australia are about a 1.8 under 2-star rating currently. And we're talking about, when we talk about what's going to need to be done for homes and to get up to 5-star out of 10, it's looking at thermal upgrades. So I don't know exactly how much of this you'll have to do to get to 5-star. I'm not saying you have to do all of it, but this is the starting point. So thermal upgrades plus electrification of homes. And this includes ceiling insulation, floor insulation, wall insulation, the colour of your home, any sort of ceiling, you've got to seal or any gaps in the home, curtains and pelmets, external roller shutters, reverse cycling, heating, cooling, heat pump, hot water, induction. So everything's got to be electrified. And
right, no more gas. No gas.
No more gas. It's electrified. Then they're looking at solar on your roof and a battery, et cetera, and double glazing of windows. And some of the documents talk about triple glazing of windows. So there's more and more things in there that we're going to have to do. So what they're talking about currently, and again, this is all just sort of, I'm just catching it and it's all just unfolding. So this will kick in, your energy rating of your home will kick in when you go to sell it and when you rent it. So there'll be a minimum energy rating for rentals. And when you go to sell your house, that will inform people as to, that will inform the price of your house, how much your house
So it
sells.
could lower your property value or your house value.
Definitely lower your property value. And then they've also talked in the documents, government documents. So again, I've got a Substack article. I actually pull out all the documents and you can see them and give you links to the government plan. So I'm not making this up. So when you go to sell and your price, falls because it's not up to the, 5-star, they're also incentivizing banks.
Oh yeah, how do they do that? Oh yeah, okay.
Because banks have to get so this is all about net zero. So it's because this is what they say in the documents. The residential houses contribute 10% of the greenhouse gases. So they have to be taken down pretty much. I think we're going to look at 2050 where your house is zero, zero carbon, however they bring in those metrics. And so when they've got to incentivize banks and insurance companies, because banks and insurance companies also need to get down to net zero. So anything that's on their books has to get down to net zero.
Boy, it's an attack from all sides.
It's an attack. It's called incentivizing. It's like you're incentivizing this. And so what that means is banks are going to are very hesitant to lend money and take a mortgage out to give somebody a mortgage for a low energy house. And if you do manage to get yourself into a house or your own house, you're going to have a higher insurance rate for sure. They're going to incentivize you by making you pay a lot more until you do your upgrades.
This sounds like class warfare. In the end,
it's huge, and
because the people with the less resources are going to pay the most.
I know, it's horrendous, and it's only for 5 years. I've looked at in some of the government documents. It says the energy rating will stay relevant for potentially 5 years. Some I've read 3 years. Because new technology this wonderful new technology will be coming out. So you have to keep upgrading your home. So it's not a one-off. It'll go from 5, even the new builds have gone from 6 to 7 stars. They just go up. So basically what can be okay for the next few years is not going to be okay in a few years' time. And then you're going to have to do costly upgrades. Now, the government documents refer to a body called Climate Works, and they've got a couple of papers that I've read, and one is net zero homes. And basically to get to a net zero home, which is where they're going to take us, it's all about the direction of your home. So where your house is built. So you need to have north-facing, windows in your main living areas. And it's very much like what the building is made of and constructed of is going to be really relevant. So this is going to lead to knockdowns, basically, because you can't change the direction of most homes. Yeah, so this is what's happening now, and it's class warfare. And they'll probably sweeten the deal a little bit by giving some sort of grants to really, people on income support, and they can get grants, and then they've got green loans teed up, and there's
green
banks.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
So they've got 2 that are happening at the moment. One has got the maximum you can borrow is $50,000, and it's I think it's around 3.5% return, and I think it's between 10 to 15 years you've got to return the money. And the other one is one of the main banks, from memory, it might be ANZ, and that's a 4.4% loan. It's down 0.3% of 0.3% from the normal rate. So this is it. So they'll sort of sweeten the deal by, not that that's a sweet deal, but there will be probably some help for really, really low income people. So this doesn't look as nasty as it is on the surface.
Boy, it sounds like the inmates are in charge of the asylum well and truly now, to boil it down to what I'm thinking. How can any of this fly with the public?
Well, I think there's a lot of people caught up and because this is also talks about disaster resilience as well. So the homes over time will have to become more.
Yeah, but what disasters? What disasters? Media strike?
There's everything. Everything's coming. Everything's modelled. It's the worst case scenarios.
We've heard that before.
Everything's on its way. So, everyone's getting now things in their letterboxes, prepare for disaster. the Red Cross is putting them into everyone's letterbox. That was, that's a government policy. That's a government approach, because you've got to start normalising that we have to start preparing for disasters all the time. And so the houses are going to have to be resilient. This is not this first iteration. It's very, very clear. If you look at what's going to happen, this is going to incrementally become harder and harder and harder. Basically, you're probably going to need to get up to what they call a 10-star house if you just want to sort of bypass the years of torment. Get up to a 10-star house, which is pretty much most houses would have to be knocked down and built again in a particular way.
That's incredible. It really is. I mean, that's so much incoming on all fronts.
And it's happening in Scotland. They give the year 2033 as when it will be mandatory for all houses. So in the documents in Australia, it just talks about a point when you want to rent it or use or point of sale, or if you want to do a big renovation, that will all come into play. In Scotland, it's already up to in 2033 from one document I looked at, it will be mandatory for all houses, regardless of if you're going to rent it or sell it. And so this is already in Scotland. It's in the UK. It's in, someone said it was in New York City. It's in the European Union. It's a global agenda again. It'll come for New Zealand. Yeah.
So what do you think the ultimate goal is to drive people out of their own houses and into what?
Well, at the same time, our lovely government is giving kickbacks. There's some legislation sitting in there to be passed to allow much more kickbacks for build to rents. So they already are. They're giving like a land tax.
So own nothing. I've heard that somewhere before.
Yes, and I do see that because, look, what's going to happen? So in another year or two, even before the government starts to enforce it all, and people are going to become aware. They're going to become aware that to live in their area is going to be much more costly because of all the council rates and the disaster infrastructure. Managed retreat will be put on the agenda in such a way that, it's not like necessarily that this area is going to go into managed retreat, but it will get into people's consciousness that, we'll try different things, but managed retreat may happen. It might be the end of the line for your area. And then you've got people will be, hit with this, we've got to upgrade our house. And if we don't get out of here soon, our house isn't going to be worth very much when we go to sell it. So you've got a number of compounding, regardless of when the government implements it, there's enough there that's going to make people very, very concerned about staying in a particular area.
And it's all based on modelling, is it?
It's all based on modelling, and it's the highest. In Australia, they're using the highest risk, in the highest IPCC 8.5 pathway. And they're compounding potential disasters. So you look at a certain climate model for fire, so dryness and not enough rain, and you get a ranking for that. Then you look at another model for the forecast for the most flooding that can happen, and you get a ranking for that. And a number of different models are used, and you compound it and you come up with this extraordinarily disturbing number. And that's what's being done. And it's the 8.5 pathway, which it wasn't meant to be used for this regular modelling.
They even said that, the IPCC.
They did.
And that's been used here too. That's been used here.
Climate change is a wicked problem, It's a wicked problem because it's got no end in sight. And no matter what we do, nothing may work. And, so they've just, I keep saying this as open slather. And what I'm trying to push through to people who are really in the climate change agenda is have a look at where the assets are going to go.
Yeah.
Have a look at what's being said about who's going to own the assets. It's Big Corp. That used to be an issue for the left, didn't it? Doesn't seem to be an issue anymore for the left. And that's driving me slightly nutso that they're not getting.
When you look at how money is created and the fractional banking system we have, where, you can hold 10 if you're a bank and lend 100, there is no money there. So if people can't pay or there's some kind of financial crisis coming, the idea is to turn that money that doesn't exist into a hard asset, right? And this is what kind of sounds like it is happening here. So I can't afford to stay in my house anymore. I'm going to sell it. Who's going to buy it? Well, it might be BlackRock in the end.
It will be, yeah.
And they turn money that never existed in reality into the hard asset. And wealth transfer, I mean, it's so obvious, isn't it?
It's so obvious. It's a complete wealth transfer. And it's just, so the big corporations that don't need mortgages, don't need to get a mortgage, will come in and sweep up your property at a bargain price.
Yeah, that's right. And then they'll own something that's hard fixed asset. And then that gives an element of control because people have got to live somewhere, right? Oh dear, it's very sinister, isn't it?
It's very sinister. And the Australian government is doing a complete, to put it mildly, disservice to the Australian people. And you're very right, to the people the retirees, the people who've got everything wrapped up in their homes. They've got their one home. And
a home is more than a home. It's where you exist. It's your peaceful place. It's a castle. There's all these things.
I know. And you just want to, I can imagine, you just want to live there and know you can live there and live your life and raise your children or live there to the end of your life. And they are completely threatening it. I've talked to people in England as well where this is, and I've spoken to one woman who has a beautiful old stone home in England, and that's got a really bad energy rating. Old, like 150-year-old house with stone walls is a bad energy rating. She said that they're giving them stuff to, the stuff that's being added on to give you good energy ratings, just plasticky, really
crap.
bad. Yeah, crap.
Yeah, cheap
absolute crap. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what these people are, actually.
Well, it's like you can look at it like it's an endless market for new products, and it's also smart appliances. So it's not just, so you will also need to have smart appliances to get a good energy.
So Internet of Things, so they're all connected.
Yep, you need to have that and LED lighting. So yes, they will push the smart.
I hate LED lighting.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so this is New South Wales at the moment or Australia-wide?
That's Australia-wide. Like some of the things I talked to you about with managed retreat and everything's more specific to New South Wales and the government plans, but the actual ratings over homes is Australia-wide.
Is there any way of winding it back, do you think, or is this like this train has left the station?
I think I'm just trying to make people aware.
When you tell them, and I'm having a kind of reaction here, but I already knew it, what do they say? What sort of response do you get? Do their eyes glaze over or do they fall over with shock?
Look, it depends who I talk to. People who are already concerned about what's government overreach and, corporate entities controlling the game kind of get it pretty much straight away. And they're very despondent, actually. It sort of puts this, and I don't like that. It puts this sort of real distress into people. And I don't like being that person, but I don't like it, but it's what's in the government plans. It's not
people got to know what's happening, even if it's
people have got to know what's happening. It's better to be aware. And then people who are fully in the, climate change thing, they just don't think the government would do anything to. It just depends, doesn't it? Like if people
lambs to the slaughter, Kate.
Yeah, they just believe. They probably believe that we have to do it because of climate change modelling. People in the construction industry, or some of them, have been aware about this for a while and very distressed about it because of what it's going to mean for private home ownership. But I didn't know it was happening. And again, same thing. I didn't know managed retreat was on the agenda until I listened to the Women in Capity talk. Yeah. And then suddenly I realised it's everywhere through the government plans, but no one was talking about it in Australia. So there's a lot of information out there and it's kept very hidden, isn't it, until you look for it and then it's everywhere. It's very bizarre.
You know why it's hidden. You know why it's hidden.
Yeah.
Because
they have to normalise. They have to start and it's starting to normalise with the energy rating.
Predictive programming, isn't it? It's getting people in incremental bursts ready for the grinder.
Yep.
Man. All right. Well, and the big thing is, whatever happened to freedom?
There's none. There's none on this agenda. There's none in this arena.
Yeah.
No, and the other component to all of this is all this digitalizing and data collection and data storage and AI solutions and et cetera uses so much energy. So they basically, if you want to get to a 10-star, so back to that, if you want a 10-star home, you basically don't use very much energy in your home. Yeah, hardly any heating and cooling because the energy's got to be used elsewhere to surveil us and get us into.
There's that too.
Yeah, and it does say in the renewables, because everything's going to be electrified and then be through renewables, we have to do energy loading and we have to change our habits with how we use electricity. So you've got to just store it in your battery and then just use it at particular times. So there's all this energy loading usage of electricity because it's obviously not going to be intermittent and we're not going to have a regular energy flow. And they make that quite clear as well. So all these kickbacks that are going to the renewable energy companies and we, the people, are going to have to pay for it yet again, because they say the way to get past that is to have a more energy efficient house. So you upgrade and then it doesn't matter that your energy is much more faulty.
It's fascistic too, isn't it? Because of the involvement of all these corporations, private companies, everything's outsourced. It's this sort of merging of it all together into this big blob is what it feels like. And that's fascism, isn't it, in the end?
It is. And because they've got the impact markets and the ESG scoring, it means that we will get caught in this and companies will have to do different things to get a good ESG scoring. And you've got the impact markets being created. So they're actually funneling capital from the billionaire class through to do all these impact stuff, and that they get the infrastructure and then they get all the Webber's paying them to supply us with services, basically. As it said, our capacity to own things will become limited and it's more about being able to have access to services. So it's complex, but people, to understand the impact markets, and I need to understand it more to be able to break it down to talk to people. But this is a global arena. You've got the Global Impact Investment Network from the UN, partnership with the UN, and it's a way of just completely funding agendas and putting huge amounts of capital through. And our government's partnering with all of this.
I hope it's all about the money, because if it's not all about the money, it's something even worse than that. So, yeah. All right, Kate, thanks for coming back on. Good to know what's happening. Clear eyes and all of that. All right?
Forewarned is, forearmed. They're doing it. I think it's better to know. And then we can sort of put your thinking caps on a bit more.
Yeah. And as you know more, let's talk some more.
Okay.